As the dessert gets passed around after dinner, we often hear the words, "Really? I haven't got room for another bite." Have you uttered those words during this season of culinary indulgence? How about tonight? Have you eaten a huge Christmas meal before you've come here tonight, and now you are wedged into a pew feeling like at any moment a button might let go and do severe damage to the worshiper sitting in front of you? We often speak of having no room during this season. We have no room for more food. We have no room in our homes that are packed to the rafters with stuff, and a bed, every bed, is claimed by at least one person. Our driveways are overflowing with cars, and to find a seat in the living room is like going on an Arctic exploration. We just have no more room. But what about for Jesus? You have room for Jesus? Mary and Joseph arrived in Bethlehem. No one had room for them. No one. Their whole extended family lived in Bethlehem. And no one had room for them. It's kind of weird, I think. Of course, I know this was a time before there was a Hilton and a Hyatt on every corner, but in this day and age, if you needed a place to stay, you had to rely on a guest room in somebody's house. That's what the word inn means. I know we say there's no room for them in the inn, but in the biblical times, the inn was a guest room in somebody's house. Well, apparently there were already guests in every guest room, so Mary and Joseph had to stay in the main part of the house where, yes, there were animals, because average people in those days could not afford fancy barns to keep their animals in at night, so they brought them into the house. And in many houses in those days, there were mangers built right into the floors of the house so you could feed your animals at night. And most of those houses were only one room, so I imagine having your baby in the middle of the house was not quite as weird to them as it was to us. Of course, we learn from the Bible that Mary and Joseph's lives were to be filled with weird metaphors. And here is the metaphor. Just as there was no room for Jesus that night that he was born in Bethlehem, there was going to be no room for Jesus in this world either. That's what got him crucified, you know. Because he didn't fit in. He caused stress by proclaiming that faith in God is about love and forgiveness. It's not about doing certain actions that earn you points with God. People of that day wanted the Messiah to be a judge who decided who was the best and who was the worst. People today still want Jesus to judge their life choices, but faith is not a competition. Faith is a gift. At your baptism, you were given Jesus. And you're given faith to believe in Jesus. Now, life on this earth is just about exploring that amazing gift. Church is a family of people who have received that gift of faith. And we understand each other because we're closer to blood. It's Jesus Christ himself who runs through our veins. You know how it is that your brothers and your sisters understand you in a way that people outside the family don't necessarily. You know the way your spouse or your kids can finish your sentences for you. They know what you're going to say, sometimes even before you do. That's how a family works. The church is a family. And we have all received Jesus and recognize that the world does not receive Jesus. that the world does not make room for him and does not understand why we do. We live in that strangeness that Mary and Joseph must have felt the night of his birth. How can there be no guest room in which we can sleep in this entire town of relatives? But that is exactly the place we live too. We sort of live between the cracks in this world. Sometimes we've thinking that we might want to fit in, but we know we don't. There's just no room for Jesus. And because there's no room for Jesus, a lot of the time there's no room for us either. And that's okay. We are square pegs in round holes. But we're Jesus's square pegs. Jesus has not left us on our own. He has given us the Holy Spirit to dwell within us, to give us strength to live in this foreign place that has no room for us until he returns for us to take us home. And sometimes it gets tiring, and sometimes we see how the world lives and we think it'd be easier, it'd just be simpler to do it their way, to pursue pleasure and power and fun. But then we come to this place on this holy night, and we kneel at this altar and receive the very body and blood of the one for whom there was no room in this world. But there is room in us. He was not offered a place in this world, so he chose to live within us. And so he does, till he returns and takes us to live eternally with him.